Hello and welcome, or welcome back, to the Sales Enablement Festival. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. Today is all about our bonus content, as we are sharing some of the very best presentations from the previous Future of Sales Festival. Speakers will not be joining for live Q&A, however you can connect with them in the SEC Slack group. Thanks again to all of our sponsors and to you, our attendees, for bringing this event to life. Enjoy the festival.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. My name is Leah Levitt, and I'm currently the head of sales enablement at HHA Exchange. Today, I'm going to be covering the building the sales enablement function with you. So let's get started. And I kind of wanted to focus on when you're building the function, how to avoid common pitfalls. So what can we do to earn and keep a seat at the table, knowing that these are some of the things that are known to get in the way of successful sales enablement functions. And the other thing too to mention is that this presentation and a lot of the content is meant for, or will be especially helpful for people that are just getting into sales enablement, or maybe are interviewing and looking for a new sales enablement role, or have just started a sales enablement role. But I do think there are aspects to this that no matter where you are in your career could be applicable to what you're doing today. The pitfalls of sales enablement that I identify as being the biggest blockers to getting a seat at the table and having that respect really in the organization are in three categories. And the way that this is all built out is each category will focus on basically what are we trying to avoid or kind of work around. So the first one is fixed mindset. Second, lack of sponsorship. And the third is not formalizing the sales enablement function. Pitfall number one, fixed mindset. The reason why sales enablement professionals are hired into an organization is to change something. There's some kind of problem, there's some kind of challenge that a company is having, and they've identified a sales enablement person as the right person to fix that, whether it's one thing, many things. And we really need to be, agents of change. And to be an agent of change, I think we need to have growth mindsets. And I think the people that we work with also need to have growth mindsets. And there are a lot of reasons why I think that's especially important. But I think that a big part of our job is to, when we first come in, to really just absorb and learn as much as we can about that organization. I don't think that we're in any real position to provide a ton of value until we can really understand the business, the industry, the challenges that they're facing, what are they trying to solve. And I think in order to do that, we just need to let go of our preconceived notions about what that company needs or any assumptions that we have. I think that, you might have worked with someone like this before that comes in and they know everything and they've done this before, but they're, at a different company where things are different, people are different, processes are different, and you need to change your mindset and take those experiences from your past and use them to make a truly customized solution for this new organization that you're working at. And I think the other thing too is that in sales enablement, especially right now, we're all working remote, we're all trying new things. Some of those things are going to work, some of them are not. And just being open to the fact that some things aren't going to work, but we're going to keep trying is, I think, incredibly important. And I think that it will also set the tone for the rest of the organization that it is okay to try something and fail. And I do think that a lot of these aspects, a lot of these things are what makes a good salesperson. And that is, who we're trying to support and make sure that or in most cases, right? It depends who you're supporting at your organization. But in my case right now, I'm just supporting salespeople, and a really good person is, focused on learning. They're focused on understanding the business. They're focused on just understanding how they can make their prospects' life better. And I think as enablement professionals, we need to do the same. And the last big thing that I want to focus on here is just learning from other people, especially when you're a one-person show at a company. It can feel a little isolating, and you miss maybe brainstorming with your colleagues. And it's important to do that, because I think that's where the best ideas come from. Is you start with something, someone else throws something back, and you just keep going back and forth until you've ended up with something that was maybe totally different from where you started. But it's, that collaborative process that you might not have anymore by being just a team of one. So attending conferences like this, asking people, what are they doing, like sharing your problems. Maybe they have something that can help you. Maybe you have something that can help them. So for all these reasons, that's why I think that having a growth mindset is incredibly important, not only for you, but for the people around you. And I do think it's also important to work in a place where people are open to change and challenging the status quo. And my next piece here is, how do we know that that is a place where we can thrive as enablement professionals? We do get a seat at a table, and we do get to make decisions, and we are involved in what's happening. And the people that we're working with are, open to all these things and really giving us that space to do our job. Some of the most, I think, important questions to ask when you're, looking for a new home, you're looking for a new enablement role, especially if it's a new role, is just even understanding, is this new, or are you backfilling? Why is this happening now? So just understanding if it is totally new, what's the impetus? Like, what was the catalyst that pushed them to make that decision? Are they hiring a lot of people? Are they just, what kind of issues are they having that's making them look for you? And, if it's new or if it's a backfill, it's helpful to understand what's already been created in terms of a process or a function. Like, how far have they gotten, and kind of where are they looking for you to take over that? Asking anyone that you interview, whether it's recruiter, hiring manager, other sales leaders that you're interviewing with, how they define sales enablement, I think is a really interesting question. I'm sure everyone will have a different answer. And what you're looking for here is just the fact that they, one, have a understanding of what it is and what it isn't, and two, really want someone to come in and help shape that at the organization. And maybe they don't have all the answers right now, and that's okay. That's what they're looking for you to do. But just having them even, understand what it is and what it isn't, I think is important. Another question that I always ask is, what are some of the challenges you're trying to solve? Usually with this question, you can uncover what are they really looking for you to do there, and is that something that really has a lot of strategy around it, or are they just looking to have someone kind of fill some random gaps here and there? So I think these are some questions that can really help you understand if it's going to be a good place for you to grow and be a long-term home for you. The second pitfall that we want to avoid is a lack of sponsorship. And there are two things that I think we should focus on, especially when first building out the sales enablement function, that will help us avoid this. The first is building meaningful relationships. Sales enablement is truly a collaborative function, and we really need other people in the organization to help us as we're trying to get things done. And I think that sales enablement is also basically, it is very much a sales role. And we need to really understand our customer. And the way I see it, our customer is anyone that buys into what we are doing or is on the receiving end of that. And so I think the only way to be really good at that is to get to know them and to get to know what are they doing every day, what's working, what's not working, how can we work together to make their job easier, but also the job of a salesperson easier. So on the right-hand side, I have just a list of general departments or functions that typically interact with salespeople most frequently. And I think it's important to meet with all of these people. And if there's anyone at your company that you think you should also be meeting with, you should add them to your list. And when you sit down with them, have a plan in mind and, say that you're going to ask them some questions. You're going to tell them a little bit about you. And, at the end of this, the goal is just to really understand what you're both here to do. So some good questions to ask are, what are their daily responsibilities, or what are they in charge of, or the departments that they oversee. Obviously, you change the language depending on who in the organization you're talking to, but you just really want to know, like, when do you need to talk to them? What are they responsible for? How much leverage do they have, or influence do they have in the organization to get things done? Have they worked with anyone in sales enablement before? Do they have a good experience, bad experience? What can you expect from them in terms of just working with you? And what do they typically do with the sales team? If they're in marketing, they're working on campaigns with the sales team, but how do they interact with them? And what do they think is going well? And what are areas of improvement? And once you just kind of get the other side talking a little bit and telling them a little bit about themselves, we want to explain what we were hired to do. And even if you're meeting with this person early on in your tenure at the company, or if it's later on, you don't need to give them your whole plan of everything that you're there to do. You can just give them your high level, mission, why you were hired. But what's helpful for someone that's not familiar with sales enablement is to put into context some things that you might be doing by saying, well, you mentioned that the sales implementation process, it takes a long time. Sometimes customers are unhappy with the transition. That's something that we could work on together. I could help figure out a way to make sure that the sales team is trained the right way and is behaving the right way, so that process is improved. And I found that it just resonates more with people if you're talking their language and they see some kind of benefit, what's in it for them. So I think that this is a really good step to building those meaningful relationships. And I'm also a big fan of taking notes. So I use OneNote, Evernote, note like piece of paper when I'm meeting with someone in person. I just want to make sure that I'm taking everything down, because this is information that that we'll have to use in the future in order to work best with this person. And another thing to make sure that we're always staying top of mind is sharing our wins. A salesperson closes a deal and they share in the Slack channel, or there's some kind of automated message that pushes out and everyone says congrats, and it's they're sharing a win. And I think we should be doing the same thing. We should never be assuming that people know what we're doing all the time or know our value. And the best way to share that win is by having some kind of, like metric or dashboard in place that is objectively showing you or showing other people the progress that you're making. So in this example, this is just a screenshot from our Salesforce instance, and it shows basically the time to close for their first sale, second sale, and third sale before and after a formal onboarding process. So you can see that in every, it was cut in half in almost every category, if not more than that. And this is something that I'm really proud of, that we've done at the company, and it's something that we keep track of constantly every time we add a new person. So it's just really important that you have something to show for what you're working on. And we'll talk more about setting goals and what to set metrics for later on in the presentation. So the third pitfall is not formalizing the sales enablement function. And so this section, I'm going to go through a few things that you can do to just help set yourself up for success, from just developing your own onboarding plan all the way to creating a formalized sales enablement charter, which is really your business plan. So the first thing is, your onboarding. I think a lot of times people are very excited to have you on board, and they just want you to get going. They just want you to fix all the problems, start right away. And it's really on you to say, hold on a second, I really can't help anyone until I understand what's going on here. It's similar to getting on a plane and listening to safety instructions, and they tell you, don't help someone else with their oxygen mask until you put on your own. And this is the same. You need to put on your own oxygen mask before you put on somebody else's. And that's really because until we understand their business, their problems, what we're trying to solve for, it's kind of hard to figure out how can we actually help them in a meaningful way. And so creating an onboarding plan and going through this with your manager and agreeing that this is how you should be spending your first 30, 60, 90 days, however long you want your plan to be, is a really good way to get on the same page and give yourself the space and time you need to figure stuff out. This is simply an example. And like I said, the rest of this section, we're going to focus on the elements that you need to collect in order to build that sales enablement charter that you can educate your team with. But I have here, after 30 days, I'm going to be building out the charter, 60 days, communicating, what exactly are we going to be doing in terms of training and enablement? How are we communicating that with the team? After 90 days, the expectation was to build out and run my first onboarding class. So this is going to look different for everybody. This is just, an example of what it could be. But I think it's important to have this in place so you know what direction you're going down, and it will help you stay focused. The other thing too is that you may have little things come up, and I'm not saying that you can't help anyone until you're done with this. I'm just saying that we all need to protect our time and make sure that, we are doing the right thing, not only for us, but for the rest of the organization. And that is taking the time to learn and onboard before we help the rest of the company. So the first part to building out that sales enablement charter is just doing an assessment on the sales process. And then the next slide I have content and technology. But for the sales process, you really want to understand what are the metrics that are being used, what is missing, and just start thinking about, you've probably met with your manager and other key stakeholders on some things that they want you to be working on. So just start thinking about what are the metrics that will help prove the success of your initiatives. And if those things aren't in place, start talking to the right people that can help you do that. And that's typically sales ops. So they will become your best friend in this process. The second thing is listening to calls and demos. I think this is one of the best ways to learn about what's actually happening. And I think you should be looking at this. We should be looking at this in two different perspectives. The first is, how are we selling? So what are we saying? How are we conducting our calls? How are we handling objections? How are we structuring our calls? And the second is, on the flip side, how is the buyer reacting to that? What are their common challenges? What are their priorities? What's a day in the life for them? It's a good way to start understanding just more about the buyer. And the third part is, meeting with reps and asking them what's slowing them down, what's working well. We don't want to fix anything that's not broken. And we also just want to understand, how are they just going about their day today? How are they using their tools? How are they just, especially the successful reps, what are they doing to be successful? And maybe the people that are struggling, what are they doing? And just trying to understand the differences in those behaviors. So the second piece here is understanding, what kind of technology we have in place and the content. So with content, we want to know, what are reps using the most? What do they use to help them win deals? Where do those things live? Is it easy to find? When are they using it in the sales cycle? Are they creating their own content, which I guarantee they are. And I think the interesting thing there is, we just want to understand, why are they creating their own content if we've already done things for them? Obviously, if there's not a lot of content to begin with, they're creating their own because there isn't any. But if there is existing content, why are they doing their own thing? It's, they've probably tested it out and they're finding that it works better. They feel more comfortable with it. And so I think just understanding why that is can help fill the gap later on as we decide what we want to do with that content. Learning management, just how are people learning new things? Do we have training sessions? Are there meetings? Or is there a learning management system already in place? Are we thinking about buying one? Where can they access trainings and information? They just need to do their job. So just trying to understand, where is all that stuff? And the third bucket is call intelligence. So, in order to listen to calls and demos, you can always sit next to someone and basically revolve your whole day around just figuring out when a good demo is scheduled. But I think the better option is having some kind of solution that captures all of your calls and can analyze them and can help you figure out what are the best ones to listen to for onboarding or new hires or later on in the sales cycle. So we just want to understand what's going on with that. Are calls being recorded? Where are they? How do we use recorded calls? Are we doing call reviews? So we just want to evaluate all these things to understand, what is the state of the technology stack today? What are some of the gaps, and what can we do to start thinking about filling those gaps? So creating goals, I really believe, especially when you're brand new and there's not much in place, that less is more, and to focus on a few really important things and in getting those things right, than doing a lot of little things and kind of, doing them half-assed sometimes. So in this example, I have onboarding, and let's stage it that there's no onboarding. Everyone just kind of starts, they go through a checklist, listen to calls, meet with their manager. So one of the first initiatives is coming out with a real version 1 formalized onboarding. It's just helpful to understand, why are we doing this? What's the process, and what are we expecting as results? So that's your metric of success. And if you're implementing a version 1 of anything, it's okay to not have some type of measurement, because you're just trying to figure out the baseline of where you are today. I don't think it would be fair for yourself to put that kind of expectation without even having gone through any previous iterations of onboarding. So the goal there is just to get it done and to see what the impact is on ramp, and hopefully for onboarding, people want to stay longer because they're getting the training and education that they need in the first place. And as the organization progresses and you have more time to build on what you've already created, you could create a goal that's maybe version 2 of onboarding, which is you're building on that initial program, and maybe it lasts longer than the initial boot camp. But now you can start to say, all right, like we have our baseline metrics, and now we really want to like drive down the percentage of time it takes to, hit their full quota. And we want tenure to increase by this percent, and we want win rates to increase by this percent. Because, now we actually have something to compare to. Whereas before, when we were just rolling it out, like we're just trying to get it out there. And the other thing to mention is that as your priorities change, as the business's priorities change, your goals should change too. So this should ideally be a living, breathing document that you meet with your manager and you're constantly assessing, are these the right things that I should be doing? And if they're not, what should I be doing instead of that? And taking something out and putting something else in, and just making sure you're on the same page about that, I think is incredibly important, especially as you're getting started. Pulling everything together that we just went through, the Sales Enablement Charter is really a living, breathing business plan that pieces together all of the things that will make sales enablement at your organization. You can add more things, less things to the charter, but I think these are like the foundational pieces that you'd need to really just explain to someone, what is it that you're doing, why is it that you're doing, and how are you doing it? So having just even a description of the purpose, what is your function's mission? What are you trying to accomplish? Keeping that really short and sweet. Your audience. So who are you supporting? Account executives, sales development, sales engineers, CSMs. You want to make sure that there are no gray areas, because down the road, you don't want this to haunt you when someone says, oh, I thought that you also supported that team as well. This will make it very clear as to, who is your main audience. And by the way, since this is a living, breathing thing, that doesn't mean that any of these things can't change. It's just, this is going to be your version 1. This is going to set you off on the right path. So the scope is another, piece that's really important, and that just sets the expectations on what are your responsibilities. So typically, sales enablement's responsible for onboarding, but are you also responsible for training and coaching, or is that, sales leadership? Are you working together with them on that? Or, a lot of people think that you're also responsible for aspects of HR and getting people up to speed with payroll, just really simple stuff. It's fine just to outline what's in and what's out of scope for you. Technology, what are you going to be using to store your content, to help teach people new concepts and give them a place to go and learn or relearn things that they've seen before? And where are you going to be storing all of your calls so that new hires can listen to them and existing reps can listen to them to just get better at their craft? Process, just outlining, how are you going to go about developing, creating, and maintaining initiatives and programs for sales enablement? Just what is your thought process? You don't have to outline every single detail, but just how are you planning on going about doing your job? And then goals, all of the goals that you went through with your leadership team and manager, making those visible to people so that they understand what are you working on, and how will that impact them. And the goal is also to present this charter at some point to your team so that they understand just what the sales enablement function is and how you're going to be helping them. And last but not least, the maturity model is really just the vision. Typically when you have one person running sales enablement, that's going to look very different from when you have a much bigger team with more specialization. So what does the future of sales enablement look like at your company. And again, this is something that's probably going to change a lot, but it's good to start somewhere. So we just covered 3 main pitfalls of sales enablement and how to avoid those pitfalls. So let's just do a quick recap. The first one was fixed mindset. So we really want to adopt a growth mindset and set the example for everyone that we're working with, that they should be also doing the same if they really want to see change in their organization. The other aspect is make sure that you're finding the right place for you by assessing if that organization during the interview process does have a growth mindset and they are open to change and they do really want someone to come in and help them navigate those changes and create a real strategy. The second is, lack of sponsorship. So how do we avoid that? And we avoid that by building meaningful relationships across the organization and sharing our wins. And last but not least is just not formalizing the sales enablement function. And the 2 biggest ways that that we can do that is by really like creating our own path. And that starts with our onboarding plan. And the second is creating a sales enablement charter. And that really finalizes, all the things that you were doing during your onboarding so that you know the direction that you're heading in and everyone else does too. So thank you everyone so much for joining me today. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. And, if you have any questions about anything that you saw, you want to chat, you want to talk about something that's going on at your company or you're interviewing, please feel free to connect with me, LinkedIn or my personal email, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.